right, well, good morning, Thrive Church. Hope you all are doing great. We want to start out by saying welcome, first-timers. If this is your first time either here or in Edgewater, we are so glad you're here. How about love for first-timers, everybody? We are so glad you are here, and you picked a great weekend, an incredible weekend, I guess, if we want to continue that running joke that'll be happening the rest of the day. But we have been going through the decades here at the movies. So we started with Star Wars in the 70s, jumped to Back to the Future in the 80s. Last weekend for the 90s, we journeyed into the Matrix, or did we, right? And then today, we're going to go to the 2000s and go through the movie The Incredibles. And then we'll finish up next weekend with The Greatest Showman. So a great film. You do not want to miss it. In fact, if you have not invited somebody to be a part, you still have time. Make sure you get the invite cards. There should be some in your worship guide. Make sure you invite somebody to come next weekend. It's going to be really, really good. So anybody out there a fan of Disney animated films or The Incredibles itself? Anybody like that? Yeah. See, I used to would have called them cartoons, but now I'm a sophisticated grown adult. And so they're animated movies. And in this animated movie, a lot takes place. And we're going to cover the movie today. But you have to know that The Incredibles was an extremely successful film. Not only did it gross over $633 million, it was nominated for over 50 major awards and won over 40, including Academy Awards. It won the prestigious Hugo Award as well as took Best Animated Film. So it's a very, very popular film. But it tells the story of the Parr family. Bob, Helen, Violet, Dash, and Jack-Jack, a crime-fighting superhero family. But they didn't start out that way. They started out as Mr. Incredible, the solo superhero, Elastigirl, the solo superhero, and all the other supers. They were individually going after wanting to be incredible. They were wanting to be the superhero of superheroes. And so the first part of the film, we get a glimpse early on into a rare happening, an interview with superheroes. Now, we don't get to see that often, so let's go ahead and check that out. So in that clip, Mr. Incredible himself gives us a few pointers there. He says, everybody has a secret identity. No one wants to be super all the time. And then he goes on to say, just when we think we've gone out and saved the world, it finds its way to get back in jeopardy again. I don't know if you guys ever feel like that, but I know so often I feel the pressures of the world, and I feel all the things that can happen over the course of a day, and sometimes we feel broken and we feel overwhelmed, and we feel like we just can't keep pushing like we're pushing, so what do? It's easier to put on a mask and to go through life pretending to be somebody that we were not created to be. And in this clip, that's exactly what they start talking about, is everyone has a secret identity. So things did not get much better for the Incredibles after this point. For all the superheroes out there, they were about to go through a major change of events. But right before that happens, we have Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl coming together in holy matrimony. What a day it was. But it quickly turned. Watch what happens. So here were the superheroes. They were the biggest and at the top of their game. And then all of a sudden it started to change for them. They had to take off their superhero suits. They had to blend in. They had to become normal. And so Bob, aka Mr. Incredible, became Bob, the insurance adjuster. And so as he had to blend in, he started to lose sight of everything that he was, and his pride was literally stripped from him. And if we really take a look at this inside of the Bible, we can actually find a story that parallels with this pretty amazingly. It is actually from one of the heroes of the faith, directly out of Hebrews 11 all the way back to Exodus. It's the story of Moses. Now, for those that are not aware of who Moses is, or for those who think it is Charlton Heston, I thought I'd go ahead and dive into a little bit of backstory on who Moses is. So during the birth time of Moses, the Israelites, or the Hebrews, they were actually enslaved by the Egyptians. The Pharaoh had taken them captive and forced into slavery. They were in bondage, and they were not being treated good at all. And so at the time of Moses' birth, the Pharaoh had actually issued a decree that all the sons of Israel that were being born had to be put to death. And so there was a baby born to parents inside of this captivity who did not want to follow that decree. So they went to the river and they constructed what literally was a little ark, a little floating basket, and they put the baby in. And they floated the baby down the river. And through God's sovereignty, that basket found its way into the arms of Pharaoh's daughter. Pharaoh's daughter, through God-sized events, took that baby in to raise him as her own. And she named him Moses. Moses literally means taken out of the water. Pretty creative. And so she takes him in and raises him as a prince of Egypt. So Moses grows in stature. He grows in fame, and people feared him. He was handsome. He was strong. He was powerful. But he comes to the understanding that he is a Hebrew. Even though in title he's a prince of Egypt, by birth he was a Hebrew. And so one day he finds himself walking among his people, and he sees someone being treated unfairly, his own people being treated unfairly. Watch what happens in the life of Moses. We'll read it right here. In Exodus 2:11-15, it says, "Many years later, when Moses had grown up, he went out to visit his own people, the Hebrews, and he saw how hard they were forced to work. During his visit, he saw an Egyptian beating one of his fellow Hebrews. After looking in all directions to make sure no one was watching, Moses killed the Egyptian and hid the body in the sand." So Moses is now defending his own people. The next day, when Moses went out to visit his people again, he saw two Hebrew men fighting. "Why are you beating up your friend?" Moses said to the one who had started the fight. The man replied, "Who appointed you to be our prince and judge? Are you going to kill me as you killed that Egyptian yesterday?" Then Moses was afraid, thinking, "Everyone knows what I did." And sure enough, Pharaoh heard what had happened, and he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in the land of Midian. So here's what happened. Moses was defending one of his own people. He ends up taking out an Egyptian guard, and his own people, instead of being grateful, they start saying, "Why did you do what you just did?" Tells Pharaoh. Now Pharaoh comes after Moses. And Moses has to flee for his life, stripped of the title Prince of Egypt. So now Moses finds himself in the middle of the desert. And now he becomes a shepherd. From Moses, Prince of Egypt, to Moses, the shepherd. It brings us to our take-home point for the day. If we are to defeat the enemy, we have to learn who we truly are. One of the most asked questions probably of anyone in the room, but I know I've asked myself many times, who am I? And how did I get here? What am I supposed to do? It's so easy to put on that mask, and it's so easy in the midst of brokenness and in times where we feel absolutely worthless. It's so easy to just hide behind a mask and to say, "I'm okay, I don't need anybody. I'll be just fine." Mr. Incredible had to become Bob, the insurance adjuster. Moses, the Prince of Egypt, had to become Moses, the shepherd, because neither one of them were ready for that next thing in their life. They had to go through a season of being stripped of all their pride. Moses was dining at the finest tables inside the land of Egypt. And now he's chasing around after sheep in the middle of a desert that's not his home. Pride was gone. He had to be stripped. I believe there are three truths that we can look at that will really help us in our quest to answer that all-important question of who am I? And I believe that these three truths are foundational in everything that we do as we seek to discover who we are. The first truth is, in anticipation, there it is, pride leads to destruction. Pride leads to destruction. Now, here's how pride is defined. Pride is defined as a feeling or deep pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's own achievements. Let me explain what that means. Pride says, look at me. Look at what I've done. Celebrate me, right? The superheroes at front, they were all about, this is my game. I'm at the top of my game. This is who I am. I'm Mr. Incredible. I'm Elastigirl. I'm Frozone. Prince of Egypt. He got all the praise and honor that he wanted, that he could handle. Pride says it's all about me. It says I don't need a God to depend on. I don't need anything else in my life. But the truth is, we were made to depend upon our God for all things. Not just big things, not just some things, but complete dependency upon God. So here was Moses and Bob firsthand coming to a realization of a verse that we find here in Proverbs 16:18. Pride goes before destruction, and haughtiness before a fall. They both had to come to the end of themselves in order to come back to a place where they learned how to live again and be all that they were supposed to be. For Bob, he had to learn how to become a father again. He had to learn how to be a husband. He had to learn that it was bigger than just about him. But he got lazy, and he got out of shape. And the things that he once did were no longer the things he was doing because he lost himself. But deep inside, there was a longing still to help people, to save people, to jump in and to defend those that were defenseless. And there came a day where he couldn't take any more. Watch what happens in this clip. So now I know probably you all sat down and you know that Pete's been coming out and dressing much like the characters from the films that he was talking about. And you're probably thinking, oh man, he just got away by wearing a t-shirt. But the truth is, for the last 15 years of my life, just like Bob had been sitting in that desk for 15 years, I've been feeding myself unhealthy food. I haven't been working out so that you could get a true glimpse of what Bob looked like after 15 years of not being Mr. Incredible. Yeah. I did that for you all. So anybody wants to go out for pizza and junk food after, we'll do it. So, but did you hear what the boss told him? The boss said, you need to think about yourself. You need to think about our company. Stop thinking about anybody outside of here. You need to concentrate on yourself and on what you need to do to survive. Now, I'm not saying that you need to go and choke out your boss and throw him through 4 walls. If you do that, I'll watch it on YouTube later in the week. But what I am saying is there comes a point in time for all of us that we cannot ignore what God is putting on our heart. And we can't ignore that stirring of the Spirit of God moving through our lives that's calling us to remember who we truly are. Amen. For Moses, this happened. Moses was not left in the desert. For those who know the story, you remember that there was an amazing miracle that took place in the middle of that desert. As Moses was out there and he was shepherding for 40 years, he was lost. His pride was broken. But God had not forgotten Moses. So Moses one day is in the desert and he sees a bush that is burning, but it's not catching on fire. It's not burning up. It is on fire, but not burning up. And God speaks to Moses through that bush. And he tells Moses, I have a plan for you. And it is a plan that is going to change history. But Moses is not in a place where he's ready to hear that. Moses has forgotten himself, and he is stripped of everything. Look at what it says in Exodus 39, or 3, 9 through 11. This is God speaking through the bush. Look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abuse them. Now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people Israel out of Egypt. But Moses protested to God, who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? This is a prince of Egypt formerly. He had access to the Pharaoh himself. But all the long years in between, where he had been stripped of pride, and he was now Moses the shepherd. He's saying, God, I might have once been a prince in Egypt. I'm just a shepherd now. You got the wrong guy. You've selected somebody who is very incapable of this. I can't speak. I have no bravery here. Look what God says to Moses. God answered, I will be with you. And this is your sign that I am the one who has sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God at this very mountain. But Moses protested, if I go to the people of Israel and tell them the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, they will ask me, what is his name? Then what should I tell them? God replied to Moses, I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel. I am sent me to you. Here's what God was saying to Moses. Moses kept saying, God, I'm not worthy. I am not the chosen one to do this. I am not able. I am not capable. You got the wrong person. I can't do this. And you know what God said? God said, Moses, you're right. You can't. But I can through you. Go to them and tell them the I am sent you. And they will listen. And they will do what you tell them. It's not about Moses any longer. Moses, the shepherd, was now disappearing. And Moses, the man of God, was rising up. And if we really get down to the story of Moses, we see our second truth. Humility leads to honor. But not honor for the sake of Moses. Not honor for the sake of everyone in this room. Honor for the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, because we have been stripped of our pride. And in humility, we are empty vessels. And God says, you're empty now. I can use you. And he fills us up with himself and his presence. And he so moves in our life that the world is not the same. Humility leads to honor. Look at it in 1 Peter 5:6. It says, so humble yourself under the mighty power of God, and at the right time, he will lift you up in honor. What is the right time? The right time is at the exact moment in time that God will receive the most glory. There reached a point in time where Moses had to remember. Why did he have to remember? Because God was saying, it's time for me to act. And I need you to go because I'm going to use you. God called Moses not for Moses any longer, but for the glory of God. It's one of the most incredible, impactful truths in the whole Bible is the fact that when we humble ourselves and we become nothing in the presence of God, we finally realize that God is everything, and we're finally in a place where he can use us and move through us mightily. So here was Bob. He was starting to remember a little bit. Not only was he starting to remember a little bit, but if you saw on the clip that lady who snuck into his cubicle after he left, well, that was Mirage, and she was passing along an invitation to become super again. It was time for Mr. Incredible to return. So not only was it time for him to return, though, it wasn't the same Mr. Incredible. It wasn't the guy who wanted to be the first in line to go and knock everything down. No, he was a family man now. He wanted to defend all that he had now come to discover that he loved. It was about his family. It was about truly helping. It was about truly making a difference. The same Mr. Incredible, Mr. Incredible had changed. Watch what happened when he started to live in his passion again. Watch what happened when he started to realize who he was again and how he started to handle himself. His life started to change. It gave him purpose once again. Mr. Incredible was back. He got back in shape. He got back in the game, but it was now something much bigger than himself. He had a purpose again. Moses found himself in this same situation. So God had now called him to go and set the children of Israel free. He had told him to go to Pharaoh and to say that I am sent you here to tell him, let my people go. So Moses does that. He goes to Pharaoh. And for those who know the story, you know it didn't happen overnight, but Moses goes to Pharaoh, and what does he say? He goes up and he says, Pharaoh, it's time for you to let the children of Israel go. I'm paraphrasing, of course. And then Pharaoh looks at him and says, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not letting them go. I need them. I'm not going to let them go. And so Moses prays to God, and God, through Moses, starts to send plagues upon Egypt, right? The locust, the hail, the darkness, blood from into the water. And then finally it all culminated into the last plague. Every single time Moses says, let my people go. Pharaoh hardens his heart. But at this last plague, it's the death of all the firstborn sons in the land of Egypt. Now, the Israelites were told to put blood above the door, right? Our first Passover, which is a whole nother lesson for another day. But on that night, Pharaoh himself lost his son. So he calls Moses in and he says, take the children of Israel and go. Moses walks out victoriously, takes the nearly 2 million plus people, children of Israel, and they start going through the desert on their way to the promised land. But if only it was that easy, the enemy wasn't done. Pharaoh hardens his heart and says, no, I want those people back. So he summons his biggest chariots and his biggest warriors, and he sends his army, and he says, let's go get them back. Moses, meanwhile, finds himself with a big problem in front of him, a giant body of water. 2 million people trying to cross a ginormous body of water was not going to work. So all of a sudden, Moses had been called by God. He had been re-empowered by God, honored by God, sent out and filled with God. And now he's standing, looking at the Red Sea, turns around, sees Pharaoh's army coming behind him. And in a moment where just probably months or years before, he would have been absolutely destroyed and had no courage. Look at what Moses says to the people of Israel. Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring to you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. The truth is, Moses was not Moses in that moment. Moses was filled with God's power. When Moses said, do not be afraid, that courage came from God himself. Those words came from God himself. He told the people, listen, I didn't bring you out here because God is going to leave us hanging. Moses knew that God was going to come through. Moses knew that God was going to do what only God can do. In that exact moment, Moses realized what it meant to be a man of God, what it meant to be a child of God. So Moses raises up his staff, and all of a sudden the Red Sea parts, and the children of Israel start to march through. Look what happens to the Egyptians here. In Exodus 14, it says, the Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of their chariots so that they had difficulty driving, and the Egyptians said, let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt. I love that phrase. Then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing towards it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived, but the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground. God showed up. God so moved through Moses as Moses humbled himself, stripped himself of pride. God so moved through Moses that nations have been impacted and forever changed because it was God through Moses. Whatever you're dealing with in the room today, we are all in this same boat. Whether we are dealing with pride and we think we have it all together and we think that we can go out and attack the army on our own, or we're in a season of absolute brokenness and hurt, and that we would give anything for a word from God or a fresh touch from God or a kind word or to have meaning or purpose or to know who we are again. Our third truth will sum that up beautifully. Christ through you will defeat the enemy, and the world will take notice. It's Christ through us. Look at what it says here in John 5:15. Yes, I am the vine. This is Jesus speaking. Yes, I am the vine. You are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Now, so easy to translate that verse, apart from me, you can't do big things. Or apart from me, you can't do some things. But it's pretty clear. That word in the original Greek, here's what it means. It means nothing. It means you can't do anything. Apart from a relationship with Jesus Christ, you will not find your identity. You will not find who you truly are. We were created to enter into a love relationship with Jesus Christ. And through that love relationship, Him being the vine, we being the branch, we cling on to Jesus for dear life. And then He presses His life through our life. And the enemy's defeated. And the world takes notice. Today, we can stand before a holy God. And we can say, I am nothing. You are everything. Fill me, move in my life, change me. Bob Parr did become Mr. Incredible again. And Mr. Incredible stood side by side with now what is called the Incredibles, because it was more than just one person. It was about him coming together and realizing who he was meant to be. And then as a family, they fought and they took down the enemy. Moses saw God, amen. Moses saw God do something that only God can do, but it wasn't just for the sake of Moses. He did it so that generations after could hear about a loving God that came into the life of a broken person and said, you can't, I can, if you'll just let me. I will show you who you are. You're no longer a prince of Egypt. You're no longer a shepherd. You're now my child. You are mine. So I don't know who in here today is walking through those seasons and you feel broken and you feel hurting, you feel pain, or maybe you're just confused, or maybe in pride you've been saying, I got this under control. We already know if we're to defeat the enemy in our life, we have to know who we truly are. And who we truly are means the pride has to come down. The humility God will take and He will use so that through a humble heart, Christ will pour His life out through you and others will be impacted. So today, if you are walking through those seasons and you realize you have never given your life to Jesus Christ, I want to give you that opportunity today. I want you to know that there is a God in heaven, the same God who spoke to Moses, the same God who has used men and women throughout history past. That same God is calling your heart today as well. And He is coming beside you and He's saying, I so loved you that I sent my Son into the world to die for you so that no matter what you're dealing with or what sins you have or what past you have, I just don't care. It's time to realize who you are, and who you are is my child. God loves you. Jesus died for you. And today I want to give you an opportunity to know the Father's love. I want you to realize who you are is only who you are in Him. So I'm not going to call anybody forward. I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to do anything like that. But I'm going to ask everybody to bow your heads. And I'm going to ask for anybody in this room right now that needs to know that love of a Father, who needs to know that Christ died for you. I want you just to simply raise your hand so that I can pray with you and pray for you. If you need to know that there is a God and He loves you and He wants to use you and He wants to pour His life into you, would you please just raise your hand right now? God, we thank you so much that because you first loved us, that we can now have a relationship through your Son, Jesus Christ. that what was once broken and dirty and hurting now raises to life again. A new person, a new name. That we are not the same because of what Jesus did. So God, I pray over everyone in this room who's making a decision. God, let them know they are saved and redeemed, that they are no longer the old person, that they are a new person. And in humility, God, move in their life. Stir in such a powerful way that the world takes notice and that your name receives all the glory, honor, and praise. We love you, our King Jesus. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, let's give God some praise for what he's doing.